Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. We're super excited about the show we have in store for you this evening. And hey, sister, how you doing?
Hey, sister. Whew, I'm doing well. I guess I need to find a better answer because I feel like every time I come on here, I sound like I'm exasperated and like it's been a tough day. And then it's like it really hasn't. So I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. And as I said up top, ladies, gentlemen, everybody out there, our sisters and our misters, we have a really, really great show for you tonight. So, what we want you to do is go ahead, like, follow, share this broadcast. We're streaming live right now, both on Facebook and on YouTube. But we're going to talk about one of the biggest hot topics of today, and that's this it's back to school time. August will be here in a few days. We'll be starting the month of August. And regardless of where you are in this pandemic, your thoughts, beliefs, whatever about homeschooling, schooling from home, virtual school, no school, whatever your feelings and thoughts are, we're going to have two people on to share with their experiences and give us some really good insight and perspective. So, but at Hey Sister, we always have to start off with some hot topics. Sister,
Yes.
sister.
Yes, sister.
Okay, so let's talk about the versus battle with DMX and Snoop Dogg. So, who got into the versus battle this week with DMX and Snoop Dogg? If you didn't and you missed it, go back and watch it because I tell you, the DMX and Snoop Dogg versus battle was nothing but like Black Boy Joy for me. I just so much fun, so much energy, transported back in time. A little bit of comedy, a little bit of spirituality, and a whole lot of ratchetness as well. I don't know, sister, what you think?
It oh my goodness. First and foremost, I just from beginning to end, I think it was wonderful. I loved every moment of it. I found it to be comedic. It was spiritual. It was like you said, ratchet. It was in Meg the Stallion style. I guess it was bougie, classy, bougie, ratchet, and what's the savage, classy, bougie, ratchet, whatever the words are.
What's happening? Yes,
Was
it
yes,
was.
acting stupid was it was all of that, but it was wonderful. I definitely had moments where I just was transported back to Southern University, and especially I think two songs in DMX, the intro to I can't remember the name of the song, but it was one that we had done on when I was on the step team, so I was already like hyped. And I know a lot of people went in saying like, "Oh, DMX doesn't have the catalog that Snoop has," but every single one, it was a banger for me because it just reminded me so much of walking in my friends, my sorority sisters, their rooms, and just hearing that DMX playing. And then of course Snoop. I mean, Snoop's been doing this for a long time, and
Yes.
he had deep crates, and it was wonderful to behold. Just the love between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, like I said, it just so many times I was like, we just prayed and we talking about Jesus, but now we talking about murking people. I don't know. Am I supposed to love this as much as I do? Because like I said, when that dun, 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 what dun, 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 what I just go like back to the club.
Hey, listen, his brief history and No Limit produces one of the classics of all time. You hear me? And that's
Amen.
one of those classics of all time. I tell you, if you didn't watch it, I say go back and watch it. So we have some folks who are tuning in tonight. We got our super fan Jody. Hey sister.
Hey,
Hey Jody. We got Cam watching. Hey
hey,
Cam.
Kim.
Rosalind said it was a good welcome jam break. It most but definitely was. She also said she forgot some of the hits. Me too. And I tell you, they did not disappoint. And one of the great things for me was also the freestyle. And look, we got a comment. Hey, we look
Oh,
gorgeous,
thank you,
honey.
Susan.
We got some more gorgeous women coming on this evening. Just wait. So yes, Snoop says he's been in a rap game since he was 20 years old. Yes, very much. It was fantastic. So I would encourage you all to go back and watch it. If you want to have some sheer black boy joy and get into some fun and have, a walk down memory lane, have that walk down memory lane. And so another thing that happened in the world of hip hop, so you have to talk more about this.
So we don't have to go in depth about this. I was just bringing up, the situation about Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez and them dating, and somehow he gets arrested and he shot her in the foot. And the details are sketch, but I think it goes back to this question, it has reinvigorated a conversation about protecting Black women, because on social media, a lot of people who are making jokes about it, and she just had to finally just say, enough is enough. Like, I really was hurt. I was shot in the foot. Like, I had to go to the hospital, and this is not something we make jokes about. And when we think about it, I mean, there may very well be a deeper layer of domestic violence happening here. And again, this is not somebody who's married. These are not people who are married to each other. Not saying that makes it right. That definitely doesn't. But I think it makes it even worse when you think about 20-something-year-olds being in these kind of abusive relationships. So I just was bringing it up more so on the conversation about protecting Black women and putting forth the same energy, because some posts that came out were about the same people who are saying arrest Breonna Taylor's killers were also making fun of Meg Thee Stallion. And it seems to speak to the fact that this disparity that we have about the urgency of caring for Black women, which it was illustrated by, the response to what happened with Mr. George Floyd, which the response was warranted, but we are still like some hundreds of days later, and Breonna Taylor's killers are still walking around free. So
yeah, well, I definitely understand that angle. So this was a story that I really didn't follow all that much. I didn't really get into that much this week. I know it's been about a week since all of this has transpired, but I think that and I know people probably made jokes because, hey, we grew up watching Harlem Nights, right? So the whole you shot me in the foot, whatever, that probably was where some of that comedy comes from. But in general, right now, folks just cross the line. It's like they don't know where humor ends and actually being malicious begins. And so I think that everyone needs to kind of do a self-check. And, that's number one. And then number two, you know what? Allow people the ignorance and the foolery and the folly of their youth. I mean, unfortunately, theirs has to play out in front of the camera. But like you said, when you were listening to Snoop and you was listening to that DMX battle and you were transported back to your days on the campus of Southern University, I'm sure you were like, damn, I'm glad they ain't have no cameras following me to document all of that stuff that went down, right?
I am.
They are carrying out these relationships, these traumas, and all of this in the public eye, and it's just so very, it's very sad. It's a very sad situation. So, all right. So we're gonna move off of that, and then we're gonna talk a little bit, and this will be our last hot topic for the day. This morning, we were able to see John Lewis's final march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. His body was going from Selma to Montgomery, which also was a significant march, and his body's going to lay in state at the Alabama State Capitol there. And for me, it was a soul-stirring scene. It was a soul-stirring scene, and then to hear the people, the applause, to hear people yelling from the crowd that we have it from here, was just so moving to me. But just you know, when they, because like they said, when you go across the bridge, when you're on one side, not until you get to the top of the bridge do you see what's waiting on the other side, knowing that they walked to that top of that bridge and stood there, and when they saw what was waiting on the other side, they kept going. It filled me up today. So I don't know, what say you, sister?
Whew, I had the same reaction. There were just, I didn't think at first. I guess I thought, yes, the passing of John Lewis, struck me obviously as it struck many Americans. And then as I was going through and reading the comments, the one beautiful thing I'll say, overwhelmingly, the comments that I was reading as I was watching were positive. It was gratitude. It was, this was truly an American hero. And so I think I was fine for most of it. And then at this one moment, I guess, like you said, hearing the chants and things from the crowd, seeing the state troopers salute and stand there. Um, he had been beaten by state troopers. So for the Alabama state troopers to have been a part of it and escorting him across, yeah, I found myself a mess of emotions. I found myself crying tears of joy for him uh, being in a better place and triumphantly crossing that bridge. And we know, obviously they did cross, but thinking of the juxtaposition of that bloody Sunday versus today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then just a level of sadness that, we have so much more work left to do. And I know that he was able to see a lot. He was able to see things come to pass that even he probably didn't believe would happen. But I guess I just wish we were a little bit further along. So it was a mixture of all sorts of emotions, but I found myself crying quite a bit, and unexpectedly so. But I just say good night, farewell, and thank you for all that you've done for us, Mr. John Robert Lewis.
Yes. Well, that's a beautiful tribute. But one of the things that struck me, and this is just when we say that fight, the Coretta Sky King thing, the fight for civil rights is a fight for every generation. And I'm definitely paraphrasing it and not saying it exactly right, but I'll say this. Yesterday was Emmett Till's 79th birthday. He was a year younger than John Lewis. And so I will say for all of us, just don't forget. So and so with that, that's our end of our hot topics tonight. We have a couple comments here. We have one that says another significant person of our history is gone, and we definitely need to push on. So much work needs to be done in his honor, and of the other nameless, faceless people who also made progress. And the bridge crossing brought on my tears. Absolutely. So tonight, y'all, we want you to join us in the conversation. You see where the banner's running right there. So please join us in the conversation, be a part of this dialogue. But we are about to bring on two very dynamic women. I'm going to let my sister do the introductions because she has history with these beautiful women, but they have so much to share. So we're going to be talking about, hey, it's back to school. So homeschool versus schooling from home, and how to make it all work, right? So sister, take it away.
Yes, so I am honored and proud and privileged and just being the ball of emotion that I am over the last 24 hours. Just excited also to bring on two beautiful young women that I have known for 20 plus years now. I have the privilege of calling them my line sisters. And for those who are not in the Greek world, basically we came through the same chapter at the Southern University and A&M College, the Beta Psi chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha, together in spring 1997. And so I have watched them go from being college students to mothers and wives and entrepreneurs, and they have so much in common. But more than anything, I just think that they make me proud to know them. They are two of the most phenomenal women that I know. And I'm super excited to have them here. So we have Tamika
And
Prude
she's gonna be crying
Stelder.
all night long, y'all. Woo boy.
What you say?
I said that she's gonna be crying all night long because
Oh gosh.
I heard your voice cracking. I said, oh,
I
here we
know, I know. But Tamika Prude Selders, oh, and they're both from Louisiana as well.
go.
Tamika Prude Selders from Lake Charles and Kenya Afumi Lewis from Baton Rouge. So, hello, beautiful ladies.
Hey, sisters.
Hey, sisters, how y'all doing?
Hi. I'm gonna lose my earpiece because I can't hear you guys.
Okay.
Well, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, we're
Can
super
hear you.
excited. We have some high sorors going.
Oh, look at that.
Hi, sisters. Yay. And hi, sorors. Yeah.
I can't
we're
hear you
super
guys.
excited. Oh, we hear you just fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, refresh.
Yeah, maybe refresh your screen. Okay. She can't hear us. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and try to jump in the conversation, and hopefully Kenya can work out her technical difficulties and get her sound back up. Well, Miss Tamika Prude Selders, thank you for joining us this evening. So Tamika, if you could tell us, so you're a mother of 3 and you have, tell us the ages of your children and then why did you decide to do homeschooling?
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Christina. I love you. I'm not going to cry. Thank you. Yes, I am the mom of 3 children. 2 of them are young adults. I have a 24-year-old, an 18-year-old who's getting ready to go to college next week, and a 14-year-old. I'm also an elementary school teacher. I teach 1st grade, so I feel like I can add hundreds to those 3. I sort of stumbled into homeschooling. I can't say that I was somebody who just decided I'm going to homeschool my children. That was definitely not it. With my oldest son, we moved to a new city. We moved to Chicago right when he was in preschool, like pre-K 4. And we moved to Chicago in December, so we were in the middle of like a traditional school year. And we were interested in, of course, the magnet programs, like so many people are interested in the magnet programs, and you can't just jump into those programs mid-year. So I had a friend who suggested, hey, just homeschool him for the rest of the remainder of the school year while you're in a new city, get to learn, understand the school system, what it is you want to do. And I decided to do that. And that plan to homeschool him just for half of a school year ended up being like 8 years. I homeschooled him until middle school.
Okay, awesome. That's fantastic. Well, we were going to ask Kenya that question, but she dropped off. So let's take that. Let's kind of continue on that conversation. So let's talk about some of the successes and challenges that you had when you made that decision, because I'm sure it just wasn't like, boom, a light switch went off and it was like, oh yeah, I'm rocking, I got this.
Right. I think my initial challenge was like so many parents who, enter the realm of formally, I guess, educating your own children or taking on that task, is I try to make everything look like school, right? So we are schooled to school. And I was just saturated in everything that I knew traditional school to be. So I had a blackboard on the wall and I had letters and numbers. And I mean, it was like, we have to create school at home. And I think that was my first failure because, geez, 3 months in, the boy was burnt out. And I think 3 weeks in, I was burnt out. So I joined a homeschool co-op in Chicago, and that was really like my saving grace. I was a part of a group of other parents, many of them who had been doing this thing for years. Some of them were homeschooling their grandchildren after homeschooling their own children. And I think through, a co-op and collaborating with people who had the tools that I didn't possess, I was able to learn like, hey, you can really do this in a way that works for your children and also work for you. Okay. And that coupled with just, I think the flexibility in time and expectation and requirements and our opportunities to, travel and swim and play tennis and play piano. We had access to so many things during the day because park districts and things like that are wide open to homeschoolers during the day because most of their children are in after school programs. So it just worked for my family at the time. And so we just continued to do it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Kenya is back. I want to bring her back up on the screen here. Hey, Kenya, how are you?
Hi.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm having technical difficulties.
So,
let's see how long it lasts.
With telling us about why she decided to homeschool. So first, if you could just tell us, how many children do you had, and then why did you make the decision to homeschool versus continuing with traditional school?
I have 4 children. I have a soon-to-be 21-year-old. So I have a 20-year-old, 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So, and actually, my kids have never been, the ones I homeschooled have never been to traditional school. So we never did that. And
okay.
I'm not really, I think I've always wanted to stay at home with the kids. And I'm a bit of a control freak about what they learn and what they take in and who's teaching them whatever. So it was natural for me. And Tamika was my muse because she was doing it and she was doing it so well. And I would just call her or, text her and say, what am I doing wrong? Because it doesn't always go right. And like her, I did the same thing. I did my thoughts of what school were. I tried to do it at home. And it was just a terrible formula. It just was rigid. It wasn't fun for anyone. And it didn't last long. And so trying to do that with a 3-year-old is not fun at all. So we just started to freestyle things. And it's easier to do that kind of stuff when they're younger. Of course, you have to get a little more rigid when they get older. But yeah, Tamika was my lifeline there. She's the one who told, if I remember anything when I first started, she said, stop trying to recreate what you know of school at home. And it was the best advice because a lot of people who are outside looking in really think that's how homeschooling works. And it's really not. It shouldn't be. It can be for some people, but it is not for us.
Okay. Well, then let's kind of pick up on that some more. And everybody, we want you to join the conversation in the comments and ask your questions because right now with the pandemic, so everyone who had children in traditional school, it was like, scratch, remix, everybody's going home. And so if they were in elementary, it was like, oh, you have to pick up this packet and they have this packet of stuff you had to do. And if they were older and they had the technology and then they had Zoom classes, so all of this stuff blew up. And unfortunately, we're still dealing with this pandemic. And school districts all around the country are trying to figure out what's next, right? And so can you elaborate on that a little more about the difference from homeschool and just schooling from home and how you're able to, because you guys found that right mix, right? You kind of like loosen things up a little bit so you can have the success that you wanted, right? How can people who are doing this, who think they don't have a way out, they just can't figure it out, what are some things that you tell them, like how they can make this work?
To me.
Either one of you, I'm ready. I'm just,
I think the first thing I would say is just, in the midst of this pandemic, even when I've been talking to parents of my own students who are trying to get a hold of this virtual or remote learning, is just to adjust your perspective, right? Think about, people always say, I know it's cliche, glass being half full instead of half empty, right? And think about, okay, what can I control in this situation, right? What can I do? What is looking great? What opportunities have presented themselves in this situation, and how might I take advantage of that? I think the difference between schooling in a school and schooling at home is, one, a child is conditioned to be a certain way at school, and then a child is conditioned to be a certain way at home. And when you have those school expectations at home, it makes for a very difficult situation. So I think sometimes you have to relinquish control, and you have to look at the classroom like the world is your learning lab, and even as teachers, we like to say, oh, the world is our learning lab, but we don't have the same access to it as you can as a parent, even in your own home or your own backyard, if you can't go out right now. That would be my advice, is just, really think about, what can I do right now? Like, I know there are so many things we can't do. I know there are so many fears, but let me think about, I'm pretty good at math, or I'm pretty good at cooking, or I'm pretty good at whatever. And I have an opportunity to make sure my kid is at least great at that thing that I'm good at. And just, take some of the pressure off of yourself, because I think children also know when we're stressed. So if you can be excited about the opportunity to have your children at home, and allow your children to absorb some of that excitement also, that would be my advice.
I agree.
Excitement is contagious for sure. Kenya, do you want to add to that?
Well, I would just release those expectations, because you will not have school at home. I mean, you will not send them off. They will not walk. I mean, you ask a homeschool kid to line up, grab a camera, because it will be hilarious. It won't be, you just won't have the same, nothing in your house will lend to a school environment, the traditional environment that you guys are used to. So I would agree. I would release those expectations and just do the best you can, because in my experience, when my daughter came home, it was just a ton of work, just worksheets. And, there was no real absorption there. It was, it wasn't fun for anyone. It was just staring at a computer and trying to meet deadlines. And for parents that work, who are doing the same at home, I can imagine that's truly challenging. So again, like Tamika said, if you have gifts and skills that are just fun for you, then bring the kids into that, or maybe find out what their passions are, what they want to do, and move forward with that. But I would not try to recreate school at home, and lower the expectation, because it will be a mess sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes we're limited. We were talking at the pre-show. I think sometimes we're limited by our imaginations, because if you baking can be a chemistry lesson, right? It's just so many different opportunities. And I think maybe perhaps some of us who are so conditioned to have been schooled traditionally, maybe our imaginations have been limited a little bit by that. So yeah, sister, I know you have a question. Come on into the conversation.
I do. So, just to piggyback off of that about creativity, I feel like, and of course, no one is saying this to me, but I just feel the vibes of the comments saying, but what if you go to a job every day? What if you work? How do you then create a homeschooling environment for your children? And so whether you're working from home, or you actually physically go into a workplace when we're not in a COVID situation, so to speak. So I just wanted you ladies, to touch on that about being creative. Tamika, you and I talked about pods and different things like that, and bartering and ideas of that. So I just wanted to ask you more to elaborate on being creative for the mother and father who have to go to a full-time job, and they're either trying to create a workspace in their home as well, or they're traveling to an office space or some other work location.
I think, having a village is really important. For me, that was a homeschool co-op. So it was a group of people, and we leaned on each other for the things that we needed. And so there were several people in our co-op who had full-time jobs. As a matter of fact, the woman who delivered my children was a homeschooling mom in my co-op. And she worked with other parents to have her children during times when she needed to be at work. We had some other parents who, you know, taught on the college level, and some classes they would take their kids with them. Some classes they would, you know, create ways that other people could be responsible. I know in the midst of the pandemic, that can be a bit difficult for people who are going into the office. But I would also like to say, if you have, you know, the privilege of being able to be at home, if you have the resources to create a pod or an online pod, do your best to reach out to somebody you know who's struggling to have that for their children. So if you're the mom, you know, I have some friends who are like, we're hiring a Spanish teacher, we're hiring a math teacher, we're hiring a writing teacher. And I always say, that's great. Make sure you find some kids who can't afford all those teachers and include them in your virtual session with those teachers. I don't believe any one of us, you know, possesses all of the tools for success in these situations, or just to successfully, you know, rear children. But I think somebody in the circle, somebody in the village has the tool you don't have. And so it's important. I think collaboration is so important, not just in schooling your children, but just in parenting your children. So that would be my first, you know, my advice would be, you know, see who's there, try to build a network, a village of other people who can help you in that situation.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. What about you, Kenya?
I agree. We have a co-op. We have online classes that we take. It's important to know when certain things are not your gift, and that you may be holding your kids back by trying to, you know, push them in a direction with a certain skill set that you just do not own. I mean, I have so many friends who pull things together, so many homeschool. Well, I'm in Atlanta, so there's great resource here. I can find someone who teach anything here. Now, that doesn't hold true for everyone, but the online homeschool network has grown exponentially. I mean, there's a network, there's a website called Homeschool. You can find someone to teach your children anything. And a lot of them are like $10 a class, or and free, or 12 weeks to down to 1 day or an hour. You know, you can find, just use the resources. I agree. Find people. Don't try to hold all of that. You know, don't be dogmatic about being, you know, the homeschool teacher. Share, because, you know, everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, just tap into that. She's right. You have a friend who can do something or help your kids in a way. Lean into that. You know, you don't have to. Homeschooling does not mean there's one teacher. It is constant learning from a network. You know, so that's important. You don't have to carry all of that. You're not responsible. You have to be responsible.
And it doesn't have to happen between 8 and 4. You know, like if you decide, hey, between 8 and 4 while I'm working, you are playing. And, you know, between 5 and 6:30, we're going to hit it hard with the short bat, and that's it. And I think also communicate, you know, if you're in a situation where you're virtually or remote learning with your child and there's a teacher, which is my situation, be open and honest with your teacher and communicate with your teacher. Tell her what it is you can do and what it is you can't do. If you get a packet with, you know, 4 pages or 465 pages, I think you need to let your teacher know, you know what, I can't do this, but here is what I can do. And I mean, I had some students, you know, I would log on with my students and I say, hey, show me what you made this week. You know what I mean? And that was something you did. And so you get credit for that because it mattered. It might not be the exact thing that was assigned, but you did something. And I think whatever it is you do, it's great. And it's worthy of, I've learned something.
Yeah. You know, I want to jump in really quickly because what you just said there from if you work from 8 to 4 and then you just have to do 5 to 6:30 and you hit it with a short back. I love that because I have to say, I don't want to talk about folks, but I have a colleague who complains constantly about having to balance schooling her children now that during this pandemic, as well as going to work. And I think it's exactly what you're saying is we're trying to structure uh, we're trying to go to work 8 hours a day and have our kids in school for however long they're usually in school. I don't remember that anymore. I think it's about 8 hours as well. And we're trying to have them happen at the exact same time instead of perhaps saying, especially if you have some flexibility on your job, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start my job at 7 o'clock. I'm going to hit it hard till 3 and then I'm done. And then I'll pick back up with my kid from maybe five to 9. We're going to go hard there or what have you, or 5 to 7. And then that way, if you're hitting it hard from 5 to 7, you can hit it hard on the weekends as well. And it doesn't have to be exactly a mirror of what's happening during the quote unquote traditional school or work week. So I love that. Those short wins, those small wins, all that sounds good.
Yeah. Well, and I love that phrase, hit it hard with the short bat. I love that. But can we kind of expand this conversation out a bit? Because I think one of the challenges we have is what's the difference between schooling versus getting an education? So tell me, I'm gonna start with you, Kenya, because it's about, to me, it's supposed to be about educating our kids, right? Not just them going to school, like the mechanics of that. So tell us, what does it mean to get an education versus it means to go to school for you?
I mean, I think it's important to consider everything, every time teachable. So we do a lot of that, and they don't even know that they're being educated. I wouldn't underestimate kids either. Kids are pretty incredible, and so are moms too. So I think the structure of schooling is important because kids need structure. They thrive on structure, but I wouldn't close education into a box of that structure. I mean, we do so many weird things, and the kids have no idea that they're learning or what they're learning. And so we bring it up later, and they're like, "Oh, I remember doing that and why I did it." But I mean, I don't know that we focus a lot on the structure of schooling, and for me personally, um, that just hasn't worked very well. And if you walked in here, you probably think it was chaos, but it is just how we learn. And it's constant education through projects or um, you know entrepreneurship, or there's just certain things that we touch on that we don't spend a whole bunch of time on the structure of school. I don't personally. That works for Tamika. Strikes me as a person who has, I mean, I remember she told me she had Bible at this time, and then she had, they did math at 9, and and I was like, there's no way I can do that. And I tried it. It didn't work for me, but my kids don't respond well to that. But I think every moment is a teachable moment if we just have the patience to sit down and talk through. Because a lot of times parents are cooking, you just got off of work, you're just moving and shaking, and you don't take the time to talk about what's happening when you're cooking, or what is happening on the news and why it's happening. I just think that the constant conversation about what's happening and why you're doing what you're doing, that is the educational point that I always try to hit. Um, but I do miss a lot I miss quite often on the schooling structure, if I'm honest, I do. Um, and
Well,
maybe a little shamefully, I admit that.
Well, no shame here, because I love what you said. Everything and every time is a teachable moment. Tell me one of the wackiest things that you did that the kids didn't know they were getting a lesson, and what that looked like.
Gosh, I don't know. It gets pretty crazy over here. I mean, I don't know about wackiest, but like the kids watch a lot of YouTube. So I challenge them when they watch YouTube to recreate whatever they're watching. So if they're watching an educational video about something, I will challenge them. Let's do that at home. Let's figure out why that happened instead of just mindlessly watching people do things. And we'll move away from that and, and perform whatever it is at home so they understand the mechanics of things. Because my kids have generally they have engineering brains. Like they really like to pick things apart. They all, kids are all different. That's another thing. All of these kids are different. There is no blanket way to do any of it. So every child and every parent has a different need and a different response to those needs. So there's really no blanket way. But we recreate a lot of things that we see on the internet because that's what the kids are constantly consumed by. And so the only way to pull them away is to do those things at home. I can't think of anything really wacky, but we do some things that people probably would think are, really kind of weird here. But I can't think of anything really wacky. But we do a lot of hands-on things. My kids are science brain, so they love to do all things science. So we do a lot of science.
Okay. Well, Tamika, I'm gonna just toss that over to you. So this whole education versus schooling, and what are some of the unique? I'll take wacky out. What are some of the unique ways, unique opportunities that you've capitalized on to educate?
There's a great book out there that's called Schooling versus Education. I cannot think of the author's name, but there's a quote on the cover by the great Malefi Ashanti, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says something like, when you leave the education of your children to someone other than yourself, there's no way they can grow up and take on the characteristics of your ancestors. I'm just paraphrasing. But in the book, it talks about how schooling is that thing that's done, it talks about end goals, and how schooling is that thing that's done with this standard that is sort of created by someone else for everybody, right? Like the end goal is like the standard that has been created by whoever like the standard creators are, right? Whoever those people are. And then it talks about how education is everything that happens outside that place, right? Like talking to your grandma, cutting okra with your granddaddy, cooking with your mom, and how that is where like true education happens. And so I think with homeschooling, I think we have more, or those who are homeschooling, because my children are in traditional school now, but I think those who homeschool have more of a say in what those end goals are. And so you can kind of structure or unstructure that thing with the thought of what you want these people to be at the end. So that's what I think is the difference. Wacky, I think I used to do so many things, and sometimes it's just like, I just need a minute. And so I would just, think of this. When my kids were at the pre-reading stage, I used to make them assess the refrigerator and the pantry for a grocery list. And they couldn't spell like spaghetti, right? But I would give you a piece of paper and a pencil, and I said, hey, figure out what it is we need. And, somebody might say, we need spaghetti. Okay, put spaghetti on that list. Now, I don't know what you're putting on the list. And I might add things to the list, Well, when we go to the store, I have this kid in a cart, and I'm like, hey, look at that list and tell me what we need. And it always amazed me how they were not writing real words, but they could look at what they'd written or what they'd drawn, and they could tell me exactly what was on that list. Like word for word. And I know most parents would be standing over a kid like SP, that P is backwards, whatever. And I was like, no, you create a list. You're responsible for that list. And when we get in this store, I need you to tell me what's on that list. So things like that. I used to also create these busy boxes. And, I told some of my parents this, where I would take a big box and I would just put stuff in the box. Paper towel rolls, toilet paper rolls, roll of duct tape, like just whatever I could find, I would fill a box. And I would say, hey, today you have to create something using everything in this box. Like nothing can be unused, right? And then you're going to tell me what this thing is and what you use it for. And I mean, from rocket ships to cars to, huts and tents. they would figure out how to pull that stuff together to make something. And for me, I just needed, I just needed time. So I used to create all these wacky scenarios. My daughter, when I needed a nap, I would sit her in the bed and I would say, hey, once I fall asleep, everything around this bed will magically turn into water. And if you get off this bed, you're going to be in trouble. And that girl would sit in that bed and she would just look like, woo, I cannot get off this bed because I might drown. And some people might think that's horrible, but it gave me like just 20 minutes to get that. So I think, you find ways to just to just be creative and get what you need and somehow give your children what they need in the process.
Mm-hmm. I love
I'm
that.
so
I love
jealous
that.
that
We
you
had one
took
time. Oh, we had a comment here about if you think about it, actual classroom time is usually only 4.5 hours, maybe less when you remove time, take roles, switch rooms. No switching room, no traditional lunch break while at home, and no peer distractions. So, I think some people try to, as you said, they trying to make whatever that day is, 7 to 2 in the high school, 8 to 4, whatever it is, they're trying to do that exact same day, and really all of that time is not instruction time. Yeah. So
Tamika, I know that you said something the other day about if they can get a little bit and you can get a little bit, like that's a win. It doesn't you shouldn't get everything you want and then the child feels like they've got nothing. The child shouldn't get everything they want and the parent is like, I gotta come back tomorrow and do this again. But it should be a mix of everybody walks away and feels like they've gotten something out of it. So you had said that to me the other day, and I thought that was a great thing as well. But I want to switch gears really quickly. Both of you, because I feel like you are only touching just on the surface about. So I'm just gonna say this. Tamika and Kenya have some of the most phenomenal children I have ever met in life. And, I have put myself up for adoption. Neither one of them is accepting me. They don't want to adopt me. But, your children play musical instruments. Your children are entrepreneurs. Kenya, your 6-year-old son authored a book and has since authored, I believe it's 2 or 3 books. He's on number 3. Number 2 books. I know Hannah has been a fashion designer since I don't know what age. She plays the violin and has even played with, what was it, the New York Symphony recently?
She was at Carnegie Hall.
At Carnegie Hall. So these
Hall.
are exceptional kids. They're not
so
just.
So you mean they're not telling us the whole truth right now? Huh?
They're not telling us everything. They're like, yeah, so we tried a few things. And these are not so I want to talk about, so first of all, how do you maintain, because your kids have also played sports. I believe Kenya, your children were swimmers at one point. So how do you integrate the sports and the instruments and all of those things into your homeschool curriculum?
Well, that's the easy. As Tamika touched on, that's really easy because we have all of the hours that the school kids can't get to. So that's the easy part. That's the those are not challenges at all because all the kids are in school, so we have access to all the good stuff. And so I mean, and that's required. That's necessary. You have to get them out of the house, and it's really hard now with COVID, though. It's really hard we stopped all of those sports activities, and just because we were concerned, but it just doesn't feel like everyone else is concerned. And so we had to pull away from those things. But I think those things are necessary and super easy. Those are plug and play. Those things are, they all play with school age, with the traditional school children. I try not to put my kids in homeschool sports. I think that's a little overkill, but they do all of their sports with traditionally school children, and And that's the easiest part, I think.
Well, I didn't know if people. I don't know who all's watching, but I don't know if people know that that is even an option. Like your kids can still play sports,
Oh, absolutely.
and it
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be, you know, just them hanging out with you at the house trying to.
Oh yeah,
Work
absolutely.
together.
Now I have never done um, school related sports. I'm
Mhm.
sure you can if you pay taxes. I'm sure you can
Yeah, you
have
can.
access to that.
Mhm.
Yes, but we've never done that. We have such great parks and rec uh, opportunities out here. So I've never had to really search for anything. I can find
Mhm.
archery, I can find lacrosse, I can find everything. We have access to everything. So that hasn't been hard at all.
Right.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
then
What
the entrepreneurship, I want to talk about that too. But go ahead, sister. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think that that's a really, good point. Like they have these wonderfully exceptional children. They're playing it safe right now. But one of the things I want to talk about, because our time is kind of getting winding down. It goes by so fast. Let's talk about getting to college, because both of you have young adults. And I know, Tamika, you said your oldest is 24. So I think some people have fear, trepidation, like, am I preparing my child to actually be able to go and to higher education and what that looks like and that process. So can you tell us about that experience getting to, and I think your oldest is already through college.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us about that.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that colleges are very excited and actively recruit homeschooled children.
Mm.
They are, they're just different. And I don't know how to explain it. I chair a scholar advisory committee for a national scholarship organization. And it's like when you find out a kid has been homeschooled, there's just something like, I knew it. I knew it. But I don't know of any homeschooled child or even unschooled child, because my daughter unschooled for a couple years.
Wait, time out. Brrr, time out. Flag on the plate. What is unschooling?
So unschooling is when we endeavor to learn while intentionally not doing anything that looks or feels like traditional school. So we abandon everything that looks like traditional school. That's workbooks and math books and spelling books and desk and sitting down and
And
but
it's child led, right?
yes, it's absolutely child led. But those students, who are schooled at home, they're going to college. They're not having. I think if you talk to any college admission rep, they will say that those children who are homeschooled are not the ones who are considered unprepared for college. I think it's the exact opposite. I think they're independent. I think they have all of the soft skills we talk about. I think they're resilient. They're mature. They have grit. I think just because their experience is just so different. They've lived they've been adulting long before they entered adulthood. I think that's probably a better way of saying it.
Wow, that's
Can you? I'm sorry, because Tamika, I know a little bit of the story. Can you share a little bit of the story of why you unschooled for a little while there?
Yes. So, we talked earlier about, in parenting and schooling and trying to rear children. You're trying to balance what you believe is best for your child with what you know or believe is best for you. And sometimes what is best for your child is not always what is, best for you. And you have to make a decision. So when I put my children into traditional school, I did so knowing that that was not the best option for them. That was not what was best for them. But at the time, I had just lost my mother. She suddenly died. I had a 6-month-old baby, and putting some people in school is just what was best for me. Fast forward a few years, my daughter was entering middle school, and there were just major red flags I noticed, particularly as it pertained to what I felt like she believed about herself. In 4th grade, her learning difference was identified. we are always very open about your learning difference. We are not people who are like, you have a learning difference, it's taboo and we don't talk about it. We're like, girl, now listen, this is your difference. These are the tools you need, and this, you know, this is how you need to manage this thing. So by the time she hit high school, Hannah managed her own 504 meetings. Michael and I wouldn't even have to go. You know, she was like, oh, and this is, you know, she had all her own paperwork. But in middle school, I just noticed just a decline in just what she believed about herself. And I felt like, I don't want to say that school was causing this decline, but school was sort of like a barrier to my being able to really work on that intentionally with her. Well, both of us. And so I just needed to move like that thing out of the way and totally focus on, girl, you're amazing, you're great, you're the bomb, and during this time we're gonna prove it, right? And so, you know, she was always an artist. Like she's an artist, and people who are artists, you understand, you know, I'm crafty, that's different. And so I found artists, like people who were really artists, like my friend who's been in Hollywood and on Broadway, and just, you know, people who were really doing that thing. And I said, guess what? You're going to be with these people because, because that's, you know, that's all I know. We had a friend who owned a photography studio. He was also, he also was a sculpturist, and she spent a day with him once a week. And then I found somebody else. Her writing assignment, which was probably the only writing assignment she had, only came when she asked her dad for $300 to launch a business. She wanted some seed money. And he said, where is your business plan? And so, you know, she worked on this little business plan and she presented it. He said, I don't see anything in this business plan that tells me when I'm going to get my money back. So then she had to go back. I got to figure out how I'm going to pay dad his money back and blah, 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 blah. We talked about interest. I was like, girl, 0% interest. He's not giving me interest. You know, we talked about what that meant, how long, how much you would pay, you know, and that's really how she launched the business, because it was just, she was always creating stuff and she thought, hey, let me sell some of the things I create.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, we were talking about college. Where are your kids in their getting to college? And have you ever considered unschooling, Kenya?
No, I've never considered unschooling. I mean, maybe I do unschool to a degree, but the word unschooling kind of troubles me a little bit, just because I know I like how Tamika took a time, carved it out, and unschooled. I know some unschoolers and who just, that's all they do. And I don't see true merit in it for them, for, you know, long term. I think it's, I think sometimes it can be an excuse for moms to just disconnect, parents to disconnect. And I see a lot of Minecraft playing all day, and it's a different kind of thing.
Yes.
No, I haven't considered that. Some people may argue that I do unschool. I don't like the word unschool, so I kind of move away. I tend to move away from that. College for my oldest he's in college. When we get to high school, we kind of let them decide whether they still want to be homeschooled. And my daughter, did not want to be homeschooled anymore. She wanted to do, you know, traditional schooling. So we haven't had the path from homeschooling to college. I know people who do it and they've been successful, but we haven't done it.
Okay.
My boys are already talking about transitioning to traditional school.
Well, I love to hear that, because I think one of the things you both have said a lot tonight is that doing what's best for your child and doing what's best for you as the parent, and kind of, you know, co-creating what that is. And it might look different for each child, right? And that's also allowing yourself that flexibility. We have a couple comments here. One said, very good info. I have so many emotions as a mom and a therapist, but great insight. We have another comment here. Says, I believe that homeschool provides more of an opportunity for education versus schooling. The additional time in the day that is gained from the inefficiencies of traditional schooling allows more time to foster creativity. promoting that entrepreneurial spirit, taking ownership, and developing maturity. And then we have a That's My Line sister. So, hey, hey, girl, hey. I think those are very powerful. Well, we're going to get ready for our kind of closing remarks and how you ladies want to sum it up. So I'm going to start with you, Kenya, to first. So anybody out there who is struggling, trying to figure out, hey, managing the pandemic right now as well, any advice you have for those folks in closing?
Well, I hear moms say all the time that they could not homeschool. They just don't have the patience. They don't have the resources. It's just not in them. And it surprises me because women are amazing. We can do some crazy things that we hadn't really, thought through that we could do. So I just think patience and lowering the bar a little bit. Don't try to do school at home. Don't try to mimic what your kid's doing at home. It's just an unrealistic expectation. And just be confident and be okay with the days that nothing is learned, as according, with your books or your, the lesson that you plan. Some days I plan a lesson and it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And that's realist, that's life. And it's okay to do this. It's okay to fail. It's okay for the kids not to enjoy it sometimes. That doesn't mean you have failed. It just means it's a real experience. And just hit it hard the next day. Just come back and hit it hard.
And talk about, boy, that's preparation for the workforce, huh? We have a comment here that says, do you hear the patience and grace in the voices of my lovely line sisters? I'm not built that way. Please pray for me as my 2 high schoolers participate in Launch Ed this semester. So yes, Erin is here in Florida, and so it sounds like she's chose the option that I have. So I have a rising freshman, a ninth grader. I also have a rising senior who will be continuing to do their education from home this coming semester. So pray for me too. We can pray for each other, Erin. Maybe we can become our own learning pod and support one another, right? Tamika,
Absolutely.
any words or advice, suggestions for the folks out there who are watching from your experience?
I definitely second everything Kenya has said. I think just be easy on yourself. Like she said, lower the bar, be easy on yourself, graceful with your children. And it's okay to know what your non-negotiables are. I just think communication is key. If you're schooling or parenting with a partner, like my husband is a bit more traditional, I think you sit down and you discuss what are your non-negotiables in this thing? What do you feel like must happen? And then you can communicate that with your children. And as they get older, they actually have their own non-negotiables. I think it's important to reevaluate that whole thing and understand that life happens in seasons. And so does homeschooling, because Kenya said I had math at 9 a.m. and then I'm telling you the girl got to middle school and we were unschooling. Just know that with seasons and life, things change and you have to constantly reevaluate, what's going on, and be okay with the fact that, I read the Tiger Mom book like 47 times. No, but seriously, I read it 3 times. And I'm telling you, as a young mom, my goal was to be a tiger mom. And today I'm like, I tell people I'm somewhere between like an alley cat and a circus tiger, like somewhere right there. But I mean, I looked at that tiger mom and I was like, I want to be that girl. But I'm not, I'm not. So I think, just be easy on yourself, easy with your children, maximize the opportunity. Kenya and I can tell you they grow so fast. Like it's just, man, 15 years, they just fly by. So maximize the opportunity and know that those children are going to be fine.
And you too will be fine, Mama. So before I get closing comments for sister, I want to say Mama Tamika at Mama Tamika, Kenya at Kenya Afumi Lewis. Both of them, this is how you can connect with them on Instagram. folks, if you have questions out there, reach out to them. These ladies are very generous and they're honest, they're transparent. Yes, they so much grace, so much patience, so much poise, but they've done it. You know, they have college, you know, one has already graduated from college. They've done it. They've in school, out school, back in traditional school, homeschool. I mean, they've done a little bit of everything. So
one day you need to talk to the children. That would be their perspective.
Oh yeah, hold on. That would be probably a whole nother episode, right?
Right, my children are probably looking at this like
Right, exactly. You're right.
Yeah,
Right.
I love that. But connect with them. Here's how you can find them on Instagram. They also both are entrepreneurs. So Kenya does candles. You can find lightcandlestudio.etsy.com.
With her son, so it's also an educational opportunity.
Yeah. And you know, she has a young author. So, you know, hit her up on IG so you can also copy one of his books. I think we one of his books was when we did our Cheerful Giver giveaway, he was one of the authors that we featured. And then Tamika, her site is Brown Baby Design. And some of you may have seen her. I used to see her every summer at the Essence Festival. You know, they had virtual Essence Festival this year. So but yeah, she has a line of shirts, and it's all kind of like all kind of wares, right? So you can check her out there too. Sister, closing comments.
I was just gonna say, and if you've seen her at Essence Festival, you've seen her children also work in the booth, because again, these ladies believe in teaching the principles of entrepreneurship at an early age.
everybody.
Yes. Well, I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you, ladies, so much for coming on to talk to us. This actually came out of me reaching out to both of them on a completely different topic. And then as we were talking, I was like, you know, this would be really helpful to have these conversations on Hey Sister, because as we are very uncertain about what's going to happen in our education system here, where we have folks who have probably unschooled, homeschooled, boarding schooled, etc., making decisions for parents in a traditional school setting. I just thought, you know what, maybe this is a perfect time for some of us who may have never considered schooling, and by us I mean y'all, but schooling from home. Doing so are those who have found themselves in a situation where they are trying to balance a work day and a school day. Now, maybe if they got some advice from women who have done it and done it well. Like I said, both of these women, between them, have 7 kids, and those 7 kids are not just 7 regular children. They are exceptional, wonderful kids. Now, again, what they would say about their homeschool teachers, I don't know. But from where I sit, you guys have done a phenomenal job. So thank you very much for coming on the show, and I love you very much.
Yeah, well, I say a ditto to all of that. And I am so, for those of us who are Black mothers who often don't know the options or choices that we have, seeing you two is a great example, because now I'm like, hey, I can reimagine some stuff right now as well. And so that's just so powerful. And especially with our daughters, when you talked about unschooling your daughter, that hit me really in the gut, because that's when we see it, that middle school age for our girls, especially that loss of confidence, that loss of that spark in them, in their eyes. And so taking her out of that traditional environment to, like, you know, breathe life back into her, that is what so many of us could have used, even ourselves, when we think about ourselves at that time, right? So I commend you, and we thank you so very much. So for everybody that's out there, we want you to, you know, have these conversations, share this conversation with your friends who are trying to figure out, what do I do? You know, what options are available to me, and how can I support schooling as well as educate my children? Because I think really we have to do both things. And so with that, we're going to sign off tonight. We say thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Hey Sister. Ladies, we ask that you hold the line. And so good night, everybody.
Bye.